receptors, but really what we're looking at right now with these general sensory receptors is, do they have myelin, or do they have connective tissue wrapped around the dendrites, or do they not? So let me draw two pictures. This would be a sensory neuron. That's its axon down there. Teledendria releasing a neurotransmitter. And then before we had that modified dendrites like that. Okay, so I could have that, or maybe instead I have a neuron, and just for simplicity, I'm just going to take all these dendrites like this. They're all going to be stacked kind of close together, and then I'm going to wrap this in connective tissue. So I'll have this connective tissue wrapper around it, and I'll have these dendrites exposed like that. So that's the difference of what we're looking at between a free nerve ending, where we just have these exposed dendrites, versus this encapsulated dendritic ending. And this is encapsulated in connective tissue. I accidentally said myelin, I meant connective tissue. This connective tissue up here, and this is going to be an encapsulated dendritic ending. So let's go through these different sensory receptors, these different general sensory receptors. The first ones that we're going to do are those free nerve endings. So I'm just going to put free. And the first one that we'll look at is something that we've seen before, which is this Merkel's disc. So Merkel's disc, this is located at the epidermal dermal border, but on the epidermal side, and these respond to light touch. So this is back in Unit 2, we talked about the different types of membranes, and we looked at whenever we talked about skin. So in Unit 2, when we talked about skin, the epidermis and the dermis, we then looked at these different sensory receptors. One of them are these Merkel's discs. So when we looked at the epidermis and the dermis, we know that we had these papillae, and right near the papillae, but on the epidermal side, we have these Merkel's discs. All right, some other general sensory receptors that have these free nerve endings. We can look at hair follicle receptors. So that root hair plexus, hair follicle receptor. That root hair plexus, whenever we looked at, this is a piece of hair, we know that it's surrounded by this follicle like that. And associated with this are some sensory receptors, so I'm just going to draw a sensory neuron to show that. And if this hair is bent, if it gets bent like that, then that information that it's bent is going to go up this root hair plexus, and then we're going to basically feel. So you'll just feel some sort of sensation of the area of where that hair gets bent. And all right, root hair plexus. All right, next one is an itch receptor. So with itch receptors, we have pores in our skin, and sometimes things like fiberglass or wool, they're small enough where the individual fibers or pieces of fiberglass can go down into our skin and activate these itch receptors. So the itch receptors are in the dermis, which is made of connective tissue instead of epithelial tissue, and these itch receptors, they're located in the dermis. And they're activated by things like wool, and fiberglass, because these things are small enough to fit through our pores. So if I drew my skin, I draw a hole right there, and let's say it maybe goes down there. And in the skin, I know I have this dermal border, and maybe right down here I have an itch receptor. So I have a piece of wool or a piece of fiberglass going down that pore and activating that itch receptor. Okay, these next ones that we're going to look at are these encapsulated nerve endings. So we just looked at the free nerve endings. Now we're going to look at these encapsulated. So remember, these are wrapped in connective tissue. This is your picture. This connective tissue wrapping around the dendrites, or the dendritic field, receptive field. Those are nuclei. Okay, so the first one that we'll talk about is a Meissner's corpuscles. So we've already looked at these. And actually, I'm going to write both of these up here, so we'll do Meissner's and Pacinian corpuscles. And if I take this picture back here, which was this Merkel's disc, I was showing that epithelial connective tissue border, or the epidermal dermal border. So if I draw that, I said on the epidermal side we had Merkel's discs. On the dermal side, in the papillae, we have these Meissner's corpuscles. So these are also responding to light touch. And then way down deep in the dermis, in that dermal layer, we have these Pacinian corpuscles. And these are going to respond to deep pressure. So hopefully this is just review for you from Unit 2. All right, cool. So let's just see some different, basically, like the rest of these are kind of just like stretch receptors, but we have stretch receptors located in different parts of our body. So the first one that we'll do, and remember these are all encapsulated nerve endings, so they have a smaller receptive field, more specific information. So the first one we'll do is a Ruffini's corpuscle. So where are they and what do they detect? Where are they? They're in the connective tissue. They're going to determine the stretch or the tension within that connective tissue. And I'll just draw one picture at the end to kind of demonstrate all of those. So we have Ruffini's. We've got our muscle spindles. We have golgi tendon organs. And joint kinesthetic receptors. So again, all of these are just going to be detecting stress or tension within a joint. Stretch, stress, tension, all the same thing. But in the muscle spindles, these are going to be located in the muscle. Golgi tendon, these are located in tendons. Joint kinesthetic receptors, these are located in synovial joints. So kind of self-explanatory. And they're all detecting this stretch or tension. So if I draw, let's say I draw my humerus. So radius, ulna, elbow joint, humerus, ball. Okay, so I know I have some muscle surrounding that. I have this bicep up here and this tricep down here. And I know that the origin of the bicep is way up here at the humerus, but the insertion is actually down here in that radius ulna. So I'll draw a tendon in green showing this connection like that. All right, so let's put some different, and don't forget that we have a connective tissue wrapper around this whole muscle called an epimysium. So in that epimysium, in that connective tissue, we're going to have a Ruffini's corpuscle. In that muscle, we're going to have a muscle spindle apparatus. in this green tendon, we're going to have a Golgi tendon apparatus. In this synovial joint, we're going to have this joint kinesthetic receptor. The whole point, let's say I contract this bicep. If I contract this and the tension's too much, what can happen? Or let's say that someone pulls my hand, so here's my hand, and they pull it in that direction and I stretch all this stuff out way too much. Well, what can happen when you overstretch something? You can tear it. What happens when you overcontract something? You can tear it. So all of these are going to be sending information up to my brain to let me know, hey, here's the amount of stretch or tension that you have. Don't overdo it. All right, we'll end the video here because this is all about sensory receptors, and then we'll move actually into moving the sensory information up to the brain.